Good morning and welcome to KBC News Check on this 9th day of December 2025. For the next 1 hour or so, we'll be talking about mediation and conflict resolution in the country and beyond. And later on, we will be looking at 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. Remember, it's an annual event that is observed from the November the 25th to the 10th of December. So tomorrow we do expect a number of activities, but we will be taking stock to see exactly where we are as a country and as a region as well. But talking about mediation, there are many ways of resolving a conflict, and many of us know about going to court or the litigation process. But did you know there is mediation efforts, and also in Kenya you even have a mediation training institute just to try and sort out some of these conflicts? One reason is because in litigation or in courts we have winners and losers, but in mediation we will have a win-win situation, and at the end of the day we shake hands. A practical example is what we saw a few days ago in the US when the President Donald Trump was actually mediating in regards to the Congo conflict, and they shook hands. Well, what are the results of that after that? And mediation itself, we have had mediation in Africa, we've had mediation in the region. Talking about the region, the South Sudan conflict is one of those initiatives. I'm talking about the Tumaini initiative. And if you remember the DR Congo clashes, I do remember the former head of state, President Uhuru Kenyatta, also being one of the mediators, but now the process has taken a new route, as we saw after the signing of the deal in Washington, D.C. a few days ago, and our very own President William Ruto was there to witness that event. Allow me now to rope in my panel of experts without further ado, beginning from my extreme left, where we have James Mangerere. He is the President Mediation Training Institute. Karibu sana.
Thank you.
Also good to note that he is also an advocate of the High Court. There's a conversation that we had about a month ago, but this time around we'll be talking about mediation, and also will be telling us more about the International Mediation Conference that will be taking place right here in the country. And then will be telling us when and what exactly we need to do, because it will be the first virtual one that they've been holding. They've been holding mediation conferences in the country, but this is the first one, and it will be virtual. Why the route? But we'll be telling us more in regards to that. But just next to him, we have Victor Baba. Victor Baba is a dispute system designer at Weinstein International Institute. Karibu sana, Baba.
Thank you so much. Good to be here.
Karibu sana. He's also a lawyer and an advocate as well. And perhaps to begin with you, President, I'm looking at mediation. The last time we were here, we were looking at how it differs from litigation. And from what you did say is that mediation is far much better than litigation. Kindly, for the interest of our viewers, tell us why mediation and why it differs and how it differs with litigation process.
Thank you very much. I think I'm happy and glad to educate the public about mediation, because that's one of my duties as a professional mediator. Mediation is an alternative dispute resolution process. Alternative to what? Alternative to traditional litigation. We always know that when people have disputes, the first thing they talk about is see you in court, because that's how we have been wired from our Anglo-Saxon masters, that the only best way to resolve this dispute is take it before another person to make a decision on your behalf. Mediation is an alternative dispute resolution process where parties are empowered to make their own decisions. Your job as a third party who is neutral is simply to facilitate negotiations about it. And for more understanding, in Kiswahili we call it mchakato wa upatanishi, wa kuleta uwiano kati ya watu wawili ambao wako na mgogoro. That's what we do. So it's very important for the public to understand. And why is it good? Mediation resolves disputes quickly. Okay, courts take years to resolve issues. It resolves disputes but maintains relationships. It is cost effective. You don't have to pay your lawyers, you don't have to go to court, you don't have to close your businesses and go to court. So it's the best way of resolving disputes, because at the end of the day, you have win-win solutions. Parties walk out of that situation, both of them feeling as winners. In fact, if Kenyans knew, the first thing they would have done is just to go first to mediation before even making a decision to take the other person to court. I've been in court for several years myself, so I know what happens in court. And I've been in mediation for 24 years. I know what happens in mediation. So it's very important for the public to understand that there is a better way of resolving disputes. And that better way, it's not arbitration, it's not litigation, but it is mediation, where you empower parties to make their own decisions, which is a self-determinative process. Yeah, where you determine the dispute yourself. The other good thing about it is that it's private. You know, courts are public. You go and wash your dirty linen in public. Mediation is private. You resolve your disputes and nobody knows there was a dispute in the first place. It's confidential. In fact, what comes out of it is a contract enforceable by law, an agreement, which is then public. People will only be able to see the results, but they will not be able to see the process. So all bad things that happen during conflict resolution are hidden in the process, and therefore it helps people to maintain their dignity in resolving disputes.
Yeah, and I like the way you mentioned that at the end of the day, after the mediation, whatever is agreed there is anchored in law.
Exactly. It's a contract enforced by law. In fact, we have gone further under the new rules now, Legal Notes number 145 of 2022, the rules of mediation. Now you are allowed, even once you have done a private mediation, you can bring that agreement to court. The court can adopt it, and it can be converted into a judgment of the court. So why should you go through 2-3 years in court when you can solve your disputes expeditiously, and whatever agreement emanates from that, you can bring it before the court. The court will adopt it into a judgment. Yeah, you can solve your disputes in a week. A dispute which would have taken you 2 or 3 years to resolve in court. Do Kenyans really know about this?
Yeah. They don't. Some of them don't know.
They don't. They should know about it. Yeah.
Mr. President, I'm looking at the economic, also the economic side of it, is that if at all I'm having a case for the last 5-6 years, that money is tied up.
Exactly.
But when it comes to mediation, that is instant. As soon as the process is done, you can have your money back.
There was a report given by the judiciary about how much money mediation has released back into the economy. You know, most of the disputes we have, complex commercial disputes that are before the courts, those ones can be resolved through mediation. And all the money tied up, which is stalling the economy, can be released back to the economy. And if you look at the statistics before the courts right now, you realize that since they started the court and mediation program, a lot of money has been released back into the economy. Now, the statistics we do not have is on private mediation, which has released even more money. People do not know because private mediation is not broadcasted for the public to know. People usually mediate every day, and this money is released back to the economy. Only the statistics we have are within the courts. And remember one thing Kenyans need to know, only 15% of the disputes find their way to court. 85% of the disputes are resolved down here without any... People don't prefer going to court, and therefore there is a population of 85% who resolve their disputes without resorting to the courts. So if we get a survey and we do how much is been released from private mediation, which doesn't find its way to the public and to the statistics, people will be, it's anonymous. It's so much that people cannot believe how much money private mediation is releasing to the community, so the economy. And therefore, now that we do not have that survey, we have started now developing private mediation in the country. I'm sure very soon there will be a survey which will show you how much money this private mediation is releasing, which is not at any time been broadcasted to the members of the community to know. Yeah, exactly.
Baba, you have a very interesting story, and especially your background, but you decided to be a mediator. And we have tried the Sudan conflict. Kenya has been one of the mediators, and actually we haven't provided the platform, the Tumaini initiative. We have also tried out mediation in the DRC. Why did you choose this career path to begin with? Because you have a very interesting story.
Thank you. First and foremost, thank you for having me. And secondly, I have to say that close to a decade now, Mangerer has been my mentor. He trained me. He opened my eyes into this amazing profession. And to your question, why did I pick this? Growing up for better part of my life, conflict had become my identity. The thing about conflict or dispute is that it robs you your identity of who you are. I went to law school, And I practiced for about a year, and I wasn't getting the kind of gratification that I thought I would get out of litigation, and I have nothing against litigation. As a matter of fact, there are disputes that are necessarily for litigation. But be that as it may, mediation has become a sort of an identity that I like to identify with personally. I don't like arguing. When I start arguing, I'm a different person altogether. And so mediation has given me that platform to rethink and to re-identify who I am as a person. And in so many ways, that's what mediation even does to the parties. We have various orientations to mediation. If you speak to mediators who identify as transformative mediators, the idea is to empower the parties so that after the process, you don't just have a mediated settlement, but the parties become better versions of who they are. And if it's a society becomes better than what it was. And in so many ways, my work has been inspired by the likes of Nelson Mandela, who picked up South Africa, which was pieces, and out of these pieces, he made a masterpiece. And in so many ways, mediators do that around the world. We get to mediate disputes that parties walk into the room as pieces, broken pieces all over. But through the process of mediation, at the end of the day, it becomes a masterpiece. And so looking at men like Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, men like Dr. Martin Luther King, I thought of becoming a mediator. And the first time I got to learn of mediation in Kenya, it was through the person of President James Mangerere.
And you'll be telling us more in regards to why, even after being a lawyer, you decided to venture into mediation as opposed to, continuous litigation. But Mr. President, I'm looking at mediation, and we have seen and we have said that as opposed to litigation where there are winners and losers, mediation, you finish it up with a handshake, But why is it that Kenya and many people are not embracing mediation? And for my second question that is tied to that is that we are looking at the framework of mediation in the country. We do not have a mediation act. The same way we always do public participation, which has been challenged each and everywhere you go, but we do not have a public participation act, and the route to get the public participation act has been really bumpy. We do not have a mediation act, yet we want to not only preach mediation, we want to actualize mediation, because as you have said and rightly put it, that it's a better and faster, cost-effective way of solving any conflict.
Now, let me start with the reason why people are not embracing mediation in the country. It's a mindset. We have a mindset that when somebody suggests mediation is a form of weakness, they're afraid that their case is weak. But in the real sense, people who suggest mediation understand the importance of resolving disputes and maintaining a relationship. Human beings, we are social animals, we need each other. That's why we live on earth. You can't run out of this earth. You have to keep on meeting. So interpersonal conflict is very common with us. Conflict is not a bad thing, but the way we handle conflict is what really makes a difference. There are people who are conflict competent, and there are those people who are conflict incompetent. So the idea of making sure that we look at conflict from a different prism is that conflict is good if handled well, and it becomes bad if it's handled badly. And that's one thing people need to know. Number two, you have talked about a mediation act. We have been struggling in this country for the last 5-6 years to come up with an act. But we have different stakeholders who have different intentions. They make sure they draft an act which they know will not go through Parliament because they want it to serve their own individual interests. The most important thing that I've been telling people is that can we work together as stakeholders? Even now as we are talking, we were thinking about countries like India, South Africa have come up with mediation bills which have become mediation acts. We were thinking about the mediation act. I think some people have gone around, they have come up with the ADR bill which they want to present before Parliament, which mixes mediation and other alternative dispute processes. Mediation requires what we call a legislative backbone. Unless we have that legislative backbone and we see it as a provision of its own and we respect it the way it is, then we will not go far. And I really don't understand why we have a lot of competition instead of collaboration. We need to come together, put our minds together and come up with a mediation bill, which then we present before Parliament for the purpose of legislation. Now, you see, some people have come up with something we call the Mediation Council, and they say it has it's become a part of an act of parliament. How did it go there? You've just talked about a few minutes ago about public participation. Public participation is required. Public participation is very important. When you pass things without involving stakeholders, without involving experts, you are sure that that particular bill is not going anywhere. Even that ADR, bill which they have put up, we already have put a memorandum before Parliament objecting to its being legislated into law. Why? Because it's defective, further defective. It doesn't take into account provisions to protect the sanctity of mediation in this country. And they know it. And in fact, people who do that, they know they'll do it so that it goes to Parliament, fails, so that we keep on following. I'm asking all the stakeholders and all Kenyans. Also, I'm asking the judiciary, because in most countries, the judiciary, the government, and private stakeholders work together collaboratively. We are not competing with anybody. What we have, we only have one country, which is Kenya. We need a one mediation act. First, which will control the standards of practice of mediation in this country. Number two, it will control the standards of training. Right now, we have 65 training institutions. You don't know which procedure was used to approve these training institutions. So anybody can go to the internet, pick a syllabus, put people in class, they pay money, they go ahead and train and give them certificates, and these people will bring them up into the public as mediators. Where are we going? What happens? What kind of procedure do we follow to scrutinize, analyze these people and know whether they are qualified as mediators or as mediation trainers? We don't have it. It's just a matter of presenting names to the public, and therefore you are really confusing the public, because if once you give names and approve that these are the people who are qualified to train, in the essence what you are telling the public is that you have assessed these people and you have found them to be qualified to train. So what you are giving the public is wrong information, because you have not assessed these people. If I present to you a syllabus, that does not mean I'm qualified to train. That's why institutions like the one I'm using, MTI, we go to International Mediation Institute, we are assessed. We go to Singapore International Mediation and other international organizations, we place our syllabus and the materials that we have, they assess us. They even send people into the country to come and sit in our classes and watch us train. They assess and take a report to those various organizations before approval. We don't have that kind of system. How then do you place 52 organizations in the country and tell the public these people are qualified and therefore people they train can be assessed? We have gotten it very wrong. And that's the reason why we need a mediation act. This mediation act will put standards of practice, standards of training institutions, standards of trainers, and many other things that will be put, which are registered and which form part of the law in this country. If we don't do that, I'm telling you, we have gotten it all wrong. In the next 5 years, there will be no mediation in this country, because everybody else, even I had somebody tell me the other day that he was going for a kinyosi, and he had the papa man telling him, I'm also a mediator. So he asked him, if you are a mediator, where were you training? Somebody came to our church one Sunday, a half day. We sat with him a half day and he gave us certificates. And then these people now are calling themselves mediators after attending a half day, a church presentation from somebody. That means we have gotten it all wrong. And therefore, the number of mediators that we have in the field right now, most of them are not qualified. And that's why you are seeing all these problems, the complaints that we are receiving about standards of practice. So the Mediation Act will help us manage these vices. And it will ensure that mediation is respected as a profession in this country. And we have to do it ourselves, because I know there are people who love shortcuts. You know, Kenyans, that's our tradition. We love shortcuts. But we must stand, a few people must stand up and be counted to ensure that we keep these standards up in our country.
All right, talking about standard, Baba, you have experienced conflict firsthand, and even Kenya as a country has really tried to help in mediation, and especially in the South Sudan conflict. But you decided, nonetheless, to be a lawyer, and also you decided to be a mediator. Take us through that journey, and also tell us what exactly the conflict that you are a mediator at Weinstein International Institute.
All right, thank you. First and foremost, let me say one or two things about the Weinstein International Foundation. It's headquartered in San Francisco, California, the United States. And our mandate is to make mediation training and capacity development available and accessible across the world. And we work with various entities. We work with...
Just hold on, Baba. I'm informed by my director that we have an issue with your microphone. Apologies for that. It's going to be checked by one of our technicians as we continue with this conversation. But Mr. President, I'm looking at, you've really mentioned that we really need to look at mediation in a really serious purview. And I'm looking at, talked about standards of training, standards of practice. As it is now in the country, what are those standards? And especially when it comes to your institute, that is a mediation institute.
Yeah, I'm not sure that we have any standards because we do not have any regulations managing those standards. I've not seen them. But what I can tell you is that I sit as a director in the International Mediation Institute, which is based in the Netherlands. And this is a global body that really deals with standards of practice worldwide. And because I sit there, I expect that if I come back to our own continent, those standards can be maintained. Any institution that trains must have what we call a framework, standards framework. We don't have, as MTI, we have our framework and it's available in our website. You can just visit our website and see the standards framework. We do not have that. And there is no body in the country that can say it verifies or assesses training institutions. If we had that, that would be better. So by presenting people to the public that they are qualified, that's giving wrong information to the public, to the consumers. And I think it's a wrong way of approaching it. So if indeed we want to set standards and assess institutions against those standards, then there must be available standards where people can go and check. These people, we must have a body in this country that assesses and qualifies institutions with these particular standards. That's why the Mediation Act, I keep on saying, is very important. Already now we have a team of people who are working on a mediation bill, and I'm sure we'll come up with a mediation bill early beginning next year, and we'll present it to the other stakeholders to ensure that we do it once and in the right way. Once we have that, then mediation will be respected. You know, when I say this, some people say we want to close some people out. No. If we don't keep these standards, we cannot compare ourselves with the mediators in India, in Brazil, in the United States of America. And that's why you see when mediators are required in a place like the Copper Belt in Zambia, that people have to go to UK to look for a mediator to come and mediate. Why? Because we have failed to what we call self-credentializing. We have mediators in this country who are qualified, highly qualified, who can handle this international mediation that I'm talking about. But we must self-credentialize. That's why the Institute of Chartered Mediators and Conciliators, the first body in the continent right now that is assisting in credentializing mediators and having a very strong code of conduct, can be an institution which then people can rely on. A disputant coming from China, who has an investor-state dispute in Kenya, can ask the government, where can I find a qualified mediator who follows a very strong code of conduct? They can come to the Institute of Chartered Mediators and Conciliators. Because in that institute, we do not just admit somebody because they have a certificate. We have to take them through an interview. We have to assess them, role play, and do many other things before they are admitted as mediators. That's why we are talking about the conference that we have this week.
And you'll be telling us more in regards to that. But yes. Baba, we've rectified that error. And I was asking, what exactly we're talking about, or disputes are we talking about that you are able to sort out at Winston? And looking at other jurisdictions, because you've worked here in Kenya as well as abroad, where are we in mediation as a country?
Yeah, thank you. I was just about to say that the Winston International Foundation is a non-for-profit that is headquartered in San Francisco, California, that's the United States. And its core mandate is to make mediation training and education available and accessible across the world. The Winston International Foundation has a network of great individuals who are exceptionally trained and well-experienced and seasoned mediators across over 150 countries. And through our network of senior fellows, we call them senior fellows, The Winston International Foundation is able to work with judiciaries, it's able to work with bar associations, it's able to work with many other stakeholders. Principally in Kenya, it's been working with the judiciary and Strathmore as well to develop the capacities of mediators, as Mangerer has just mentioned. That's the Winston International Foundation in a nutshell. But over to your question, what kinds of disputes do we get to look into? Principally, we look at disputes at very communal level. We look at disputes, everyday disputes that people go through. And once in a while, we will be able to participate in peace processes by developing capacities of peace negotiators on how to negotiate and how to engage once they come to the table of negotiation. Often we talk about an inclusive process and having people participate in a process, but we hardly get to talk about the capacity of these individuals to participate in such processes. Earlier on, when Mr. Mangerer was talking about mediation, he talked about mediation being we the people. It's all about the people, right? But we hardly talk about empowering these people to effectively participate in these processes. That would be a panoramic view of how we look into conflict and the kind of disputes that we participate in. But principally, our core mandate is developing the capacities of mediators across the world to become effective, efficient, and exceptionally experienced mediators to mediate disputes across the world or within their jurisdictions, so to speak. What
sort of these disputes are we talking about? Because if you ask any Kenyan, what sort of disputes do we have in the region? They'll tell you about the South Sudan conflict, they'll tell us about the DR Congo conflict. So in your purview, which conflicts do you prioritize?
We look into everyday conflicts, and the idea is to empower people, right? By everyday conflicts, I'm referring to an employment dispute, for instance, employee-employee. By everyday disputes, I'm referring to a succession matter. There's a divorce proceeding between a husband and a wife. We look into such kind of cases. But over and beyond this, right now our attention is focused on community justice systems. And what do I mean by community justice systems? We want to help communities develop frameworks that one can prevent, right? Mediation is not just about resolving conflict. There are three fundamental elements to mediation. First and foremost, preventing conflict. Number two, managing conflicts that can be managed. And lastly, resolving conflicts that can be managed. And so in that regard, we work with various communities. We have ongoing work with refugee and displaced communities, and the idea is to empower them to become effective change makers and ambassadors of peace within their jurisdiction. And we have as well disputes where we have companies and community disputes. Ordinarily, these are disputes where you have mega infrastructure development initiatives, and often these mega infrastructural development contribute to conflict with local communities, right? And so this is an emerging practice across the world, and we have our eyes set on that.
Mr. President, I'm looking at you as the Mediation Training Institute. You do work with other stakeholders, the judiciary being included, and I'm just looking at it, and question is, how do we ensure that we have a standard way of practice? Because you've talked about, we do not have an act, we do not have a body that will regulate the standard practice. How do we ensure we have a standard practice? Because there are so many bodies that you work with, not only the judiciary.
The answer is just a Mediation Act. Once we have legislation, what we call legislative backbone, once we have that, things will come in order. Right now, we are establishing mediation centers around the country. We launched the Nyamira Mediation Center. On the 18th of this month, we shall be launching the Kisi Mediation Center. We are moving to the Kakamega, Eldoret, and Bungoma Mediation Center, and then we move to the other parts of the world, of the country. So what we are doing is having mediators come together. We assist them as MTI to come up with mediation rules, case identification guidelines, the manuals that will run the mediation centers professionally. So we are ambitiously, we want by the end of the year 2026, every county has at least 2 mediation centers, so that business people, organizations, churches, when they have issues, they can refer those matters to mediation centers. We will also want to collaborate with the judiciary, and we are going to approach the Chief Justice on this. We shall directly go to the Chief Justice or Judicial Service Commission and ask them if they can come up with collaboration agreement, partnerships with them, so that when matters are, there is an overflow of cases in court right now, those matters can be referred to the community mediation centers. So what we are trying to do is to make sure that we professionalize those community mediation centers. That's why I'm training community mediation center managers to be able to run those centers professionally. Business people within it's Kisumu or Nakuru, Eldoret or Kisii, can know that instead of referring their matters directly to court, they can take those matters to the mediation center. There are case managers that will process those cases and subject them to mediation. It's only after mediation has failed that people now can consider moving to the courts. This is what we call a mediation policy that is there in the United States, in Canada. In fact, in the United States, you will not be allowed to go to court unless you come with a certificate indicating that you have attempted mediation and it has failed. Why should we put a serious backlog in courts and put a load on our judges and magistrates on issues that can be resolved through mediation? And the court and mediation alone cannot manage that. So what we are saying, private mediation centers can collaboratively work with the judiciary through an MOU, so that we have a system of referring cases to the mediation centers, and then those cases can be distributed among the panel of those people in the mediation centers. These mediators in mediation centers will be trained continuously. So we will not be having quacks in those mediation centers. These people will have to attend training and retraining every year. They will attend refresher courses and webinars. They will be assessed and given certificates every year. So and they will also be bound by a very strong code of conduct. So these are people who will be dependable and will not be having the kind of issues that people are raising right now once these mediation centers are up and running. It's an ambitious program, but we are up to the task, and we want to make sure that at the end of 2026, all counties in this country have at least 2 mediation centers, and those mediation centers are run professionally. They are not welfare centers. Welfare centers can be done separately. They can run their welfare separately. We want professionally run mediation centers that people, complex commercial disputes, land matters, family disputes, community, workplace disputes can be referred there and resolved. In that way, we will even help improve the efficiency of our court system, because our judges and magistrates will have fewer cases, which will improve their efficiency. So we are not working to bring down anybody. And that's why I'm asking the judiciary not to feel that we are occupying their space. We are simply coming to complement what they are doing. What we only need is for them to collaborate and cooperate with us, so that we work together with the mediation centers to ensure that properly qualified and professional mediators can handle matters at the mediation centers, and therefore even solutions that are being brought, even agreements that are being brought to court for adoption, are agreements that have been done professionally, and this will give easy time to the courts to adopt those agreements and convert them into judgment. And we are ambitious about it.
Mr. President, you've just mentioned that 2 mediation centers in
every county,
maybe by the end of 2026. Quite an ambitious program.
Yes, ambitious program, but we have to task.
I'll be coming back to you to tell us exactly what are some of the bottlenecks that you are seeing that could make us not actualize the 2 mediation centers in every county, and the framework, including the Act, just as you mentioned. But you've worked in a number of countries, Kenya included, and I'm looking at how mediation is in other jurisdictions. Case in point, maybe in South Africa, just like Mr. President has mentioned, they do have a Mediation Act. Maybe in another African country that has Mediation Act, and then maybe scale it out to United States where you've worked and they have a Mediation Act. How does it differ from the mediation that we have in the country, and what are some of the lessons that we can borrow from such kinds of mediation platforms?
Such a good question. I have been unbelievably fortunate and blessed to be in the United States on multiple occasions, and other jurisdictions. I have studied and taken a comparative analysis of mediation in other countries and in our country. In my opinion, the judiciary has done tremendous in terms of a court annex mediation. It's a launching pad that the judiciary and other stakeholders have done tremendous work in putting together, and the next phase of mediation in Kenya, the next level, is private mediation. Now, speaking or looking at other countries, I know Rwanda has got a mediation act. Rwanda has a very proactive attitude and culture towards mediation, which is something that I believe we can learn from them, building a mediation culture. Looking at South Africa is still developing her jurisprudence on mediation. It's going to be interesting to see how it takes its shape in the coming days and years. And speaking of the United States, as you may know, mediation has been in the United States for quite some time. The mediation movement in the United States started, should be about 50 or 60 years ago. And over time, they have developed a very proactive culture of mediation. In the United States, mediation is a full-time profession. In the United States, men and women put food on table through mediation. In the United States, through mediation, the economies as well, the economy keeps going. And as we said earlier on, it's a very proactive way of resolving disputes earliest or as soon as possible. And so in the United States, that has been possible. Again, in the United States, domestically speaking, they have one of the most robust mediation practices in the country. You have so many centers. And this is why it's important for us, as Mr. Mangerer just mentioned, that we take an ecocentric approach to mediation. And what do I mean by an ecocentric approach to mediation? Often we talk, and this is globally, and it has been empirically proven, that for you to build a culture and a practice of mediation in a country, there are three fundamental elements or approaches that you need to have a look at it. One, you need to have a legislation, right? And in this legislation, you must embed what we would call as demand. And by demand, I mean court referrals, right? How are we referring disputes for mediation? And this is where I feel that as a country we could pull up our socks. Let's have private sectors who are referring disputes for mediation. Right now, the principal referral system that we have is the court system. It's the court that refers disputes to mediators. But the next level is a scenario where we start seeing ordinary Kenyans approaching Mangerer, given his experience, and telling him, do you know what, we've got this dispute that we would want you to help us resolve it, right? Private sector as well. We need to have the private sector or corporate Kenya, for lack of a better word, buying into this process. And we're already beginning to see baby steps, right? That's the demand. We talk about 3 tracks. That's the demand track, and then we have a supply track. Supply track is where you get to deal with mediators. Do we have seasoned mediators? Do we have sector-specific mediators? Right now, if you look at the Kenyan scene, most mediators, right, are general or generic mediators. By generic, I mean they do not have a specialization. You go to countries like the United States, you go to Europe, Romania, Italy, they have sector-specific mediators. And the idea here is that you want to specialize in one given line, i.e. investor disputes, right? That's one area that you can actually specialize in. You can specialize in employer and labor disputes. You can specialize in family disputes. You can specialize in commerce or business-related disputes. That is the next level. And when you look at other parts of the world, that is the reality. You have sector-specific mediators. Right? The other element would be what we would call, we have the demand, we have the supply. This is where you have mediators. This is where you have centers, as Mr. Mangerer is referring to. And in my opinion, he's way ahead of his time. Because that's the next level, where we have centers across the country. And when disputes emerge, you just walk into a center. And through this center, you're able to be empowered to participate in a mediation process that essentially could end up with a resolution. And thirdly, we have the third track. The third track is what we would call institutions that can sort of regulate the practice of mediation. And I don't need to...
By institutions, you mean, for example, like the Mediation Training Institute? or the judiciary, or both as stakeholders as well?
It should be a multi-stakeholder approach to it. The judiciary should be involved in it, the private sector should be involved in it, and the public should be involved in it, because essentially the public is the consumer of these services. Yeah. Right? So we need to have a multi-layered and multi-faced approach to developing a culture of mediation in our country. And in other jurisdictions, right, dispute resolution is not reactive as what we have here, right? In our jurisdiction, our knee-jerk reaction is, when he steps on my toes, I'll see you in court, to patane kotini, which is a knee-jerk reaction. But in other jurisdictions, it's a reactive approach to conflict. The conflicts are inevitable. The most fundamental thing is how we manage and how we approach our conflicts. That would be my opinion insofar as your question. And looking at things from a global scale, we have the Singapore Convention, which is a global instrument that contemplates the enforcement of mediation settlement, right? Assuming a Kenyan company and a Chinese company are having a dispute and it's resolved in China, how can that mediation settlement agreement be implemented and enforced in Kenya? In a nutshell, that's the vision behind the Singapore Convention. And so many countries have actually ratified the Singapore Convention.
Has Kenya done that?
No. Kenya is yet to do that. Rwanda has ratified the Singapore Convention. Nigeria has done that. Uganda and so many other countries. Right? So looking at legislation, we need to look at it broader than from a domestic lens. We need to look at it globally as well. How, globally, how are we looking into the issue of mediation? And the benefit for the state, if I can say this, there are actually benefits to the state. States, and this is empirically proven, if you look at a World Bank report, it states that countries or states that have a robust mediation culture and legal regime have a high likelihood of actually attracting foreign direct investment. And the idea is pretty simple. If you're an investor, you don't want to put your money into a country where for the next decade you will be involved in court battles and litigation. You want to put your money into a context or state where, in the likelihood of a dispute, and conflicts and disputes are inevitable, whenever disputes emerges, in the shortest time possible, you can have that dispute resolved. And your relationship is actually preserved. So looking at things from a foreign direct investment perspective, there are benefits that are tied to countries that have a robust mediation culture.
Yeah. Mr. President, I had mentioned that I will be asking about the bottlenecks that are slowing down the growth of mediation in the country. Practical example, just like Baba has observed, is Kenya has not ratified the Singapore Convention.
Yes.
And if you look at our neighbors, they have already done that. And I'm looking at conflict, regional conflict, or even, let's say, Kenya and China. Maybe you've gotten your goods from Guangzhou, but there's a conflict now. There has been a mediation there. But since we haven't ratified anything, we don't even have a mediation act, you would find that maybe that what has been decided there, or the results of the mediation, are not recognized here in the country.
The problem we have in the country is structural, in that those people who are in leadership, some of them who find themselves in leadership of this particular, want to do things alone. They don't want to consult stakeholders in the private sector. And that's why you find that we have a problem, especially if those people who are supposed to lead us into making this are doing things alone without consulting them. They are afraid that probably if they consult the experts will take away that thing from them. We are being a little bit egocentric, and it's not really helping us as a country. Right now, we are supposed to work with the Attorney General of the Republic of Kenya and other stakeholders to bring up this Singapore Convention for the purpose of ratification, signing first and then ratification, where other countries have gone. In fact, investors coming in the country will always be asking themselves, if we have a dispute and we have a mediation in this country or outside this country, can it be implemented in the country? And that weakens us, and that's why people find their way to Rwanda, which has already ratified and developed the mediation infrastructure. So our mediation ecosystem has a problem. So what I want to ask, especially members of the judiciary, right now here they have established the standing committee. We have three arms in the judiciary right now. We have Court Annex Mediation Program, we have MAC, Mediation Accreditation Committee, and now the third one, which came recently known as Standing Committee. What are the functions of each one of them? And are they complementary or are they competing? That's the first thing. Number two, how can they work with the private sector to ensure that we promote mediation in this country? Because if they isolate the private sector and they want to work exclusively, I'm telling you, they won't go far. The wise man says that walking alone, you can walk a distance. Working together, we can walk very far, isn't it? So if they decide to walk alone, then their journey is just limited, and they should know that. Involving stakeholders is the only way that they can succeed. I hope somebody tells them. Now, the challenges that we have are the mindset, I talked about it, and then lawyers in this country have not completely embraced mediation, because lawyers are the very important stakeholders.
They are judicial officers, and we expect that...
Judicial officers are lawyers, yes, but we have private lawyers at the bar, the advocates. They also need to embrace mediation so that they can advise their clients whenever there are disputes to refer them to mediation. Lawyers can still make a living out of mediation. There is what we call trial advocacy, where you can represent your client and get paid the way you present somebody in court, but only the context now differs. We teach lawyers on what we call trial advocacy, on how they can represent their clients. So lawyers need to embrace this. Judges also need to promote mediation to support it. I'm talking about the judiciary. Judiciary now, sometimes they work and then we find things happening without involving the private stakeholders. As I have just told you, unless they involve everybody, we shall be going back and forth. It's just like somebody is digging and somebody is getting back what you have already done behind you. You not go anywhere. That's why most countries have not progressed in as far as mediation is concerned. For the judiciary, let them embrace the private sector. Talk with experts and we work together in this journey. Isolating some of us won't really help them a great deal. They need to involve us. Then there's lack of awareness of mediation in the country. You know, KBC, as I told you last time, used to have Vitimbi, Vioja, Mahakamani, and whatever, those things.
They're still there.
If they are still there, now we don't want Vioja Mahakamani. We want to collaborate with these celebrities. Start a program which will be running weekly through KBC, where we show people how to mediate disputes, not going to court. And we are ready to work together with the KBC and other media houses to ensure that we have a program that runs quickly, and so that we can inculcate the culture of mediation into the culture of our organization in this country. So that people know. I saw last week there was a dispute on land which was mediated on a program in KBC. Why don't we adopt the same? Why should we go to court if that program worked? So we have to work together with the media to ensure that we develop this. The other thing is we have a structured mediation movement in this country. That's why you hear some people are coming up with the ADR appeal, others are coming up with the Mediation Council, because they want a piece of this cake. There's no cake to be eaten if we don't grow it enough so that everybody has it. In fact, let me tell you, I remember when I look at the dogs, they fight over a piece of ugali. So every dog is in and nobody eats it. And that's exactly what's happening in the country. We are all focusing on our cake. Everybody wants a piece of it. And nobody's going to have any cake at the end of the day. It's important that we work together collaboratively. Let them wake up and smell the coffee wherever they are. That we will not be successful in this country if we do it in an egocentric manner, that you do it as if you are own and you isolate some other people so that you can be able to succeed. It's not going to work. We must work all of us together to ensure that we can overcome these challenges and promote mediation. And that's the reason why, as you said, I have brought all mediators, mediation gurus from all over the world into our mediation conference, which I'm telling you will give us a chance to talk about.
Yes, actually, that will be the next question. But allow me just to just ask Baba, because you have been in a country that has had a conflict, and we have seen the conflict is still there. We are looking at the South Sudan conflict. I'm also looking at the DR Congo. But looking at mediation in Africa, just like the President has said, is that it's becoming so robust. But unfortunately, these conflicts have dragged on for years, despite initiatives like the Tumaini initiative that we had, spearheaded by former President Uhuru Kenyatta. But we still have those conflicts. Where is mediation failing?
Great question. Looking at the world right now, and our region to be specific, if you look at what's happening in Sudan, and right now in South Sudan, Rwanda, DRC, and West Africa, if you just look at West Africa, we've had a raft of coups and attempted coups. There's so much that needs to be done. So much has been done, in my opinion, if you ask me. the African Union Constitutive Act, which is like the constitution of Africa, right, is very robust and contemplates systems and structures on how to resolve conflicts before they actually, turn out. And here we're talking about, systems that can actually analyze conflicts, right? Early warning signs and so on and so to speak. Our early warning signs in the continent have not been so effective, in my opinion, and this could be a subject matter for a different day. But be it as it may, to your question, why is mediation not doing so well within our continent and in other parts of the world? It's because you have multiple factors involved in it. And you have multiple actors that have different interests, and these interests need to be balanced. That's one. Number two, if you look at our approach to mediation in the continent, it's partly elite-driven. And by elite-driven, I mean that you have a former head of state or an ambassador, right, fly over into a country and try to resolve that conflict. And in so many ways, that is one of our undoing. In my opinion, we need to balance the fact that we can have former heads of states, because these are people who command esteem, these are people, men and women who command respect within the continent. That should be coupled up with experts on the ground, mediation experts, men and women like Mangerer who've been doing it for quite some time. They understand the dynamics, they understand the nuances and subtleties, right, that are involved in some of these conflicts. Because often what we do is we bring the political class into the room, and it's all about power sharing and so on and so to speak. And that has been the approach, and as we've seen, it hasn't contributed much to peacemaking within the continent. The thing is that we need to have experts in the room, men and women who understand the terrain, men and women who can put together peace processes that are inclusive. That's the other thing. Most of our peace processes are not inclusive. They're not participatory in nature. Often you have people at the bottom of the food chain marginalized or isolated from this process. And often when these interests are not factored into our peace processes, the processes collapse, as we've seen with the Tumaini process.
Yeah, interesting observation indeed. There are so many interests and power sharing as opposed to sitting down and just finding where the solution will come from. But Mr. President, I'm looking at International Mediation Conference. Just like you mentioned, it'd be the first virtual that you've had, but you've held other international conventions as well under the theme regional challenges, regional solutions, and global outcomes. Who are you targeting, and what do you hope to achieve at the end of this virtual conference?
The conference that we are having, which is coming up on 11th that's Thursday, day after tomorrow.
The day after tomorrow, yes.
Yes, exactly. is bringing together all mediators. So far in the continent of Africa, we have about 11,000 mediators. So we're talking about the mediators we have trained in Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, in Zambia, in South Africa, and other places. So these people, instead of traveling abroad, because it's very expensive to attend a conference either in Florida or in Netherlands, we have decided this time to invite those international presenters to your living room. That is online. So you don't even have to leave your house or your office. We are bringing them to the screen.
Can anybody log in and join?
You just register with 2,000 Kenyan shillings, which is just a cup of uji or lunch for you, which you can skip and attend that session. I have come up with invited, and people have graciously accepted to attend, like the president of the International Mediation Institute, International Academy of Mediators, President Jonathan. We have the executive director of the International Mediation Institute, Ivana Ninsik. We have Chodrado, international mediators who are coming to present this week. Even local mediators who are experienced, we have invited them. What we want to do is to share our experiences and the challenges that we face, not only in the continent, but worldwide, and how we can improve our mediation standards and systems in our continent. So I'm inviting all mediators that we have trained for the last 24 years. Please don't miss this. I decided to bring this because I wanted to reduce the cost of traveling and the cost of a physical mediation, which is conference, which is expensive. So please, all mediators, wherever you are, the ones I trained in Zambia the other 2 weeks in Lusaka, all the mediators I've trained in Uganda and other countries in the continent, mediators I've trained in Kisumu, in Kericho, in Eldoret, please, each one of you, attend this conference, because here we share ideas and you come face to face with the international mediation gurus who will share their experiences and also enrich you as a mediator. Please don't miss this opportunity, because it is one for the first time we are doing FIJO. Other mediation symposiums and conferences, we have done them over the years, and you know the attendance and the presenters we have brought. But I can tell you, this time we have been lucky to get some of the best international mediation gurus in the world attending and sharing with us their experiences on how to make yourself a better mediator and how to improve mediation practice in our continent. So please, the registration is 2,000 bob. See you in the conference on Thursday. You have no reason to miss this conference. All
right, allow me to just give Baba 30 seconds for your closing statements.
Mediation is gaining traction globally. Be that as it may, Kenya has so much potential, as I have seen, and the next level is private mediation. And for private mediation, not just to survive and thrive, we will need a holistic approach to how we go forward. And by holistic approach, I'm referring to the judiciary, we will need the private sector, and we will need Kenyans, and we will need the media as well to help us in mediation advocacy, educating and sensitizing the public.
Let me give a small comment.
Just like the last one.
Yeah, the last one I'm saying. You see, if you want to see the quality of mediators that we train, you don't look far. Look at our product. Victor Baba, an international mediator trained by MTI. So we don't need to tell you about the products we produce. They speak for themselves. That's what the law says. Thank you very much.
All right, that has been the president of the Mediation Training Institute, James Mangerere, and just next to him, one of his students and also an international mediator, Victor Baba, who is the dispute system designer at Weinstein International Foundation. Gentlemen, many thanks indeed. And by the way, they are both advocates of the High Court as well. You're trying to look at mediation as a way of conflict resolution, as also part of the alternative dispute resolution as opposed to the litigation exercise. Thank you so much for watching this first hour. On the second hour, we are looking at the 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, not HIV. And of course, I'll be joined by three guests, Caroline Letuya, Brian Maina, and Susan Wairimo. We'll be talking about that, and also under the theme that we are looking at also eliminating gender-based violence in the electronic devices as well. That discussion in a bit.